Hello, and thank you for joining us today. It is great to be hosting you at our FinTech Pitch Hour. I am Nicole Krieger, the FinTech analyst at Startup Nation Central, and together with me are my colleagues, Strategic Partnerships Managers Emma Vardimont and Rita Yankowski. I want to tell you more about today's pitch event and what we are working on at Startup Nation Central, after which you will hear from 5 incredible startups. As part of our value creation program to allow you to stay up to date and discover interesting tech solutions, we will be organizing a series of pitch hour sessions such as this one. Each session will focus on a particular topic where you'll hear from startups presenting their solutions in that space. Today's theme is data privacy and risk. Data is an increasingly important asset to companies across the board, both in its storage and utilization. Equally vital is the regulation and risks surrounding protecting proprietary and customer data. Within the Israeli ecosystem, anti-fraud and enterprise solutions are prominent sectors with approximately 150 companies that have attracted around 35% of Israeli fintech investment. Israel is renowned for cyber and big data technical expertise, making it an obvious port of call for investors and companies seeking solutions for commercial agreements. Today, we showcase select Israeli startups offering privacy-enhancing technologies or multi-channel identity verification and anti-fraud solutions incorporated in compliance processes. Without further ado, I will hand you over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Nicole.
Hello, Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Vardimont. This is my colleague Rita Yankowski. We are very excited to have you with us. But first, for a better experience, please move your mouse to the main SNC Studio frame, right-click on it, and select Fit to Frame. I'm happy to introduce our first guest, Oded Israeli, Chief Marketing Officer at IO. IO is a platform and mobile app that accelerates customer onboarding to the digital collection of automatically verified documents, assessing risk level with just a few clicks. Oded, the floor is yours.
Hi guys, I'm Oded Israeli, Marketing Officer at IO, Verified Business Identity. And I'm also a certified data protection and privacy lawyer. I want to tell you about how IO creates immediate trust in business relationships with privacy by design. So what's the issue with trust and privacy? Essentially, we only trust people who we know or people where we can get reliable data that they're trustworthy. Such data exists, in the government, in banks, across the web, but it's not centralized, and a lot of businesses pay a lot of money in order to get data on businesses that they want to onboard as new business partners. And what's the problem with identity really over the internet? Well, the internet was made as a tool to preserve anonymity, and today when businesses are asking us for all kinds of information in order to learn to get to know us better, they're asking us to fill forms, but we can fill anything we want in those forms. Or we can log in with Facebook or sign in with Google, but anybody knows that you can set up a new Google account under any name and upload any picture you'd like. So businesses also take another step and they ask us to upload certain documents like our ID or driver's license, maybe a bank transaction statement from your bank. But those documents in the digital era are also forged very easily. With Photoshop or PDF tools, I can change minuses to pluses, put any picture I want, and voila, a new identity. And this is only the problem of consumer identification and financial identity. If you think about business identity, it's a much more complex area which has been repeatedly neglected. And IO addresses this exact problem, and we are here to establish immediate trust in business relationships. I'll tell you in a bit how, but first I'll tell you about IO. It's an Israeli company. We have 10 people, 2 patents, and strategic partnership with Finastra and other large software providers. And we've actually won a $1 million grant from the Bird Foundation for our groundbreaking technology. How do we do it? Essentially, we equip any small, medium business with an IO Vault that sits on his own device, his mobile device or his PC, where he can collect digital documents from around the web, from verified, trusted sources like banks, governments, their accountants, their legal firm, anything, essentially, without any integration, and store these data and documents on their vault in a way that they're verified to begin with. So we verify all of the data in real time, and anything that enters the IO Vault is verified. And now they can share selectively these documents with any relying party, and the relying party will know this document is as good as an original because the document was made tamper-proof on the moment that it was attained from the net. Why is privacy by design so important to us? If you think about it, we rely on third-party players in order to tell us who other people are. And customers ourselves, we're not trusted because there are a couple of fraudsters out there who abuse the system. And what the IO patented technology does is it allows us to control our own data and get all the data that we as customers have access to without any integration, and this data will be verified. And once relying parties, enterprises, and banks can use this data, then we save a lot of money in the onboarding process and the verification process, which otherwise cost thousands of dollars and lasts weeks in back office verification operations in banks and large enterprises. We disrupt a very big market, both in the public data sources like the credit bureaus and public data aggregators like LexisNexis and Dun & Bradstreet. Those players have public data which is being aggregated over a while. The data there is not necessarily up to date, and they rely on certain integrations that they have. We can get any data from any source with no integration. The other part that we disrupt is the open banking and open finance ecosystem. A lot of large players are taking consumers' credentials in order to log into their bank accounts as if they were those customers, and then they save all the sensitive financial data on their cloud storage. IO takes a completely different approach to identity. We don't take any credentials. The customer go and acquire the documents themselves, but then we save them on their very personal vault. And that way we can get both consumer data and business data from any source without any integration and without the large costs that are entailed when you work with large aggregators. In addition, there's no central database, so there's nothing to hack. IO doesn't store all this financial information. The actual customers do, and therefore if a customer gets hacked, it's only that customer and the data is encrypted even there. But there's no IO central database that can be hacked. So the privacy by design is safeguarding customers' information. Identity and verified identity is a very large market. Currently, we're focusing on commercial loans in the United States, but obviously the verification of small and medium businesses for insurance, real estate around the world is a very, very, very large market. And the same technology can be used with the same effectivity also for the consumer market in the longer term. We're a strong team. All of us come from enterprises and from startups that were acquired, and we bring decades of know-how into IO to make it a success. We're currently in the midst of a financing round. If you're interested to get a free demo of IO, the platform is already working and piloted at banks in the States, or you want to participate in a round, feel free to be in touch with us. My details are on the screen. Thank you. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you, Oded. If any one of you have a question, please, you may either raise your hand or put it in the chat and we'll be happy to ask it for you. If not, so we'll make sure to connect you, of course, to IO and to Oded after the session. I see that we still don't have a question, so maybe we'll move to our next guest, please.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Oded, once again. All right, so let's move on to our next guest. So I would like to welcome Yuri Livner, co-founder and chief cyber officer at Biocache. Biocache delivers behavioral biometrics, analyzing human-device interactions in order to protect users and data. Yuri, the stage is yours.
Guys, behavioral biometrics is the science of analyzing human interactions, the way you move the mouse, the way you type information, the way you hold the mobile device, interact with it, swipe and scroll. I'm going to show you the sort of issues that banks are facing these days in terms of cybersecurity and fraud. The number one problem, for example, in the US, is account opening fraud, because to actually take all of the various billions of dollars of fraud that are hitting the government, the banking sector, etc., and move it away from the victim accounts, you need a lot of accounts where you can funnel that money. And it's very easy to open accounts these days. The data is traded in the dark web. So certainly this is one of the major issues in the financial sector today. The second one, real-time payment fraud. When it comes to real-time payment, fraudsters really like those sort of infrastructure because they basically take the money and run. And the last thing, the most nefarious type of fraud happening these days is actually a scam, where the user is convinced by the criminal to log into their own account and move money to the criminal. This is the most difficult thing to detect, because we do talk about the real user operating inside their own account. Biocache is a growth stage company. We have 200 employees. We already protect over 200 million users, and we do handle all of these various use cases and specific types of attacks. Talking about account opening, when someone is opening an account in an online environment, it could be a bank, credit card company, etc., you're going to be familiar with your own information. You're not going to be familiar with the process of account opening. A criminal is the opposite, very familiar with the process, not familiar with the data. This already creates changes in the human behavior. The second thing is account takeover. This is where we can also start profiling the regular behavior of the user, the way they normally interact in the application. We can also look at threats like remote access attacks, bots, and things like that. I did mention deep social engineering. That's the most nefarious type of attack. We'll get to this a little bit later on. Today, Biocache is focused on the banking sector. We have FinTech companies that we're servicing. We're now exploring some new industries as well. These sort of issues are now spanning across many other industries. A lot of banks decided to invest in Biocache. These are some of our strategic investors. So major financial institutions that decided that behavioral biometrics is this new field of science that can generate a lot of insights about digital human behavior. Fraud and security, cybersecurity is one area, but there are additional things that are of interest. So let's start with fighting account opening fraud. We'll give you an example of a user that is opening an account, and there are immediately two things that pop up. 3 seconds into the process, the user pastes their first name. Why would you ever paste your first name as you open an account? And the second thing is, how come it's so fast? This is too fast. This is someone too familiar with the account opening process. Now let's look at the other example. This applicant is typing from long-term memory. Let's see the way they're typing their social security number. And by the way, behavioral biometrics does not need to capture the actual data, but just the cadence of typing. What we'll see is that the user is typing it very confidently. This suggests that they know their own information, their name, social security, etc. This is a good user. We actually had a bit of an argument with the credit card company because they said, hey, this is definitely fraud. When we asked them, how come you're so sure? They said, the guy is dead. He's been dead for 10 years. We checked the social security number, belongs to a dead person. But the thing with behavioral biometrics, we're not biased by the data. The behavior was fine. When they actually contacted the user, they found that, there's a miracle. He's not dead. He picks up the phone. He had a typo, just a mistake in the social security. This is why it was mapping to a different individual. So behavioral biometrics can tell us, even if we know nothing about the user, whether it's a genuine person that is applying or a criminal. Account takeover fraud is a huge issue. This is an example of a mobile user that normally operates on the mobile device. You can see the way they scroll and swipe. It's not a straight line. You see the dots. This is where they touch the phone. You see a blue circle around the dot. This is the finger pressing on the device. But this account has been taken over using remote access. Very, very different type of behavior. Straight swipes. You see the dot, but you don't see the circle around because it's not someone physically interacting with the mobile device. This is known as an account takeover using remote access. We'll also see delays in the human interaction. So the system, the technology is able to detect those sort of attacks. The most interesting type of fraud is deep social engineering or scams. So this is where a user is being tricked to move money. A very quick example, someone gets a phone call to pay her mobile account. When she pays, she gets a phone call from the bank 5 minutes later. Hey, can you explain what it is? Yeah, it's my mobile provider. No, it's not. We see that you move money to someone, but it was a different account. This was actually fraud. We need you to log into your account. We'll give you a new bank account number, and please move all of your money to this new bank account number. You already grin and say, hey, there's no way she fell for that. That's deep social engineering, convincing the user to move money from their own account to the criminals. It will come from the trusted device. It is done by the real user. They'll pass any kind of credentials and checks. Behavioral biometrics is a very interesting field of science. When we looked at the data, we found all sorts of interesting things. For example, distraction. The user was doodling, moving the mouse randomly on the screen for 5 minutes. She was told to wait for confirmation that the money is in her new account. She didn't have anything else to do. She entertained herself by just doodling on the screen for long minutes. Hesitation. When you click to submit, it typically takes 100 milliseconds. But if you're under such influence, it does take you longer. And then being guided. Someone is over the phone telling you what to do. Normally, you hold the mobile device steadily and you tap. You see the small, the small deviations in the mobile phone positioning. But now, because you're being guided, the phone is close to your ear. You listen to the instructions, and then you move the device so you can type. Close to your ear and move so you can type. So it's in motion all the time, and this is someone giving you instructions and obviously part of this scam. Combine everything together using machine learning, and you have a very good way to detect this new nefarious type of fraud. So that's it. And if we talk about the technology itself, I can take some questions at this point. We do look at the user profile, we look at good versus fraud population, and we do develop all sorts of insights about the digital user behavior that can help us understand their micro behaviors as well as other types of digital behaviors. Let's see if there are any questions.
If anyone would like to ask a question, please just unmute your mic. And thank you for sharing those interesting use cases, Yuri.
Okay, if we have no question, as we said, we'll be happy to connect you to Yuri from Biocache after the session. And now we are moving on to our next company. With us, Omer Primor, VP Marketing at Envision. Envision helps enterprises to open up without being vulnerable with the world's first full lifecycle API security platform. Omer, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you, SNC, for having us here tonight. My name is Omer Primo. I'm the VP Marketing over at Envision. Last year, many Tesla customers woke up one morning to find themselves locked out of their cars due to a faulty API. Now, while this has nothing to do with API security and an API-related attack, it has absolutely everything to do with how deeply integrated APIs have become into our lives, right? What used to be part of developers deep inside the infrastructure is today part of the application fabric that drives forward digital transformation, enabling access to data, to functionality, and, as in the case of Tesla, to actual physical assets. But here's the thing about APIs. While we all know them as that easy to use, easy to consume, super flexible tool, which they are, when we look at this through the eyes of the actual developers, it's a very complicated piece of software. And when we look at it through the eyes of enterprises, it becomes very complicated to manage and even more so to secure. Why? It's simple, because of the way APIs are developed. An enterprise today would have dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of APIs growing up in different parts of the organization around the world, developed by different teams on different platforms, on different environments, for different use cases. Some are older, some are newer. This complexity makes them almost impossible to keep track of, to gain visibility and to effectively manage them and secure them. But here's the thing. What if I told you that APIs are not the problem? They're actually the solution. Consider this. As security professionals, we didn't used to have visibility into what users were actually doing inside our applications. But today, every API we have opens up a unique window into the application's guts. It's like being able to look like an X-ray vision on the entire transportation of data that's passing through them, uncovering what the application is doing, how it is used, by who, to what purpose, and what's the business logic, which is eventually and essentially the thing we want to be able to protect. So now imagine you could have listened to that data to uncover the functionality and protect it. At IronVision, that is exactly what we do. Our platform collects the entirety of the data that passes through the APIs and runs it through deep functional modeling, basically uncovers the functionality and the business logic of every single API. Why? So we can actually take that functionality and wrap around it the dedicated protections that are adaptive, learning, and are tailored to that specific API with all of its uniqueness. But because APIs are structured in a way that eventually it's like a consumer and the publisher are exchanging information, it's like a dialogue, what we did is we took NLP, natural language processing algorithms, and used them to analyze those transactions. So now we're able to find deeper relationships inside the data, much like in a conversation. There's hierarchy, there's sequence, there's flows, right? There's connections between the different data objects that enable us to gain much higher levels of granularity in understanding how it works. This is what enables us to move from just any anomaly detection that has eventually high false positives to what we call meaningful anomaly. Meaningful anomaly enables us to reach very, very, very low, almost marginal levels of false positives, because we know to identify only deviations that indicate someone is manipulating, is attempting to deliberately abuse the API in order to gain access to some data or functionality they shouldn't be having. But why stop there? What we did is we actually take that same learning from production environments, from runtime protection, and say we can use the same learning, the same knowledge and intimate insights into the application, into the API, and bring this back to developers to proactively identify vulnerabilities long before they are exploited by attackers, or even more so, long before they even reach production to begin with in some cases. Going forward, this is only going to intensify more and more. There are many market forces that are driving the use of APIs and the accelerated pace in which it is adopted, be it open banking for financial industries, be it FHIR for healthcare, be it customer expectations around pretty much every other industry that's undergoing digital transformation. This is where our industry is going, and this is the next challenge when it comes to protecting our applications and essentially the data that sits underneath. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have
Sorry.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Feel free to ask any question. Just unmute your mic. All right. If you have a question later on, please feel free to post it on the chat or just connect us directly. Or if you would like to follow, to have an introduction and follow up, also please connect us and we'll be able to do that for you. Okay, so we're ready to move on to our next startup?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to Shmuley Goldberg, Chief Marketing Officer at Identic. Identic, a peer-to-peer identity validation solution, allowing members to validate new users without sharing any customer data. Shmuley, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here. So Identic, as we mentioned, is an anonymous trust network. In a nutshell, we help our members, all large B2C companies, work together to validate an identity and new identity data points when they see them for the very first time. So this could be a large ride-sharing service, a large video streaming service, a travel company, a food delivery company, a dating company. These are the type of companies that we're working with at the moment. And until now, these companies have faced a very serious challenge, which is that when they see a user for the very first time, they've no idea if this is a real user who they've never seen before and is genuinely new to them, or if this is a fraudster. And this is ironic in a world where so many companies know us and trust us across the internet. The average user nowadays has anywhere from 60 to 90 apps that know them and see them on a weekly, monthly basis and have had trusted transactions with them for years. But at the same time, when a new company sees a new user, they start from scratch. So we are trying to solve this problem. We're trying to enable companies to leverage existing companies, other companies that trust these users when they see someone for the first time or see a new data point, like a new email address or a new credit card. The way that this problem has been solved until now is companies have been relying primarily on third-party data. So if I go for a new ride-sharing app, they need to make sure that I am exactly who I say that I am. This could be for a range of reasons, from credit card fraud and identity theft to more serious things like money laundering, all the way to genuine issues of trust and safety. If I'm going to go in a car as a driver or as a passenger with a complete stranger. So what they do is they would give my personal data away and they would pay money to a central data aggregator. These are companies that we've heard of and companies that we know from the last few years. And essentially these companies build up big databases of users. But there are fundamental problems with this model. First and foremost, it's not surprising that the data they have is stale. By definition, if it's in a database somewhere, it's going to be old. It might be days old, weeks old, years old, even decades old. But the data they have is never as fresh as it would be with the companies that see me and act with me today. There are also huge issues with fragmentation and coverage. The data is often incomplete and sometimes untrustworthy. And of course, there are privacy concerns here because by definition, I'm giving my data away in order to validate an identity. There are loopholes in GDPR and CCPA which are being closed today that ultimately means that this is seen as not best practice for customer privacy and is not respectful of the data that they've given you. Now, we've been built on the idea, on the recognition that there's many companies in this same state, and they're all working with these third-party data aggregators. But in fact, the people that know the user the best are the other companies and services and apps that see these users every day. So if these companies could work together, if they could remove the middleman and essentially validate against each other's databases of trusted users, they could solve the slew of problems we mentioned before. This data is not stale, it's not third party, it's today's first party data, which was given to other companies and used by other companies and trusted by other companies for many transactions, and this could be somebody that's been known and trusted for months and years and is continuously going back and is continuously a repeat user. There's perfectly clear reliability, there's perfectly clear data freshness. We're solving the fragmentation and coverage issues by allowing you not only to understand if this person exists, but if this credit card is associated with this person, or this IP address is known to be associated with this person. And most importantly, in our mind, we believe that we have set a whole new bar when it comes to the level of privacy which these companies can offer. We've built our protocol on 4 pillars of absolute anonymity. There's absolute end user anonymity, which means that if you're making a query about a customer, that customer information is never sent across the network. Not in an encrypted form, not in a hash form, not in plain text, as it sometimes is, but it's simply not sent. No one gets to learn who you're asking a question about or any of their details. In addition to that, you don't even know who's answering the question when you ask it, and when the other companies answer it themselves, they don't know who it is that they're answering. So they don't know which company made the original request. And more than that, those companies that answer the questions don't even know if they're answering positive or negative. But they're still able to validate whether or not that the data that's been seen by the first company matches a trusted transaction and a series of trusted transactions that they have in their database of good known users. So ultimately, we're enabling companies today to leverage the knowledge of the internet. This form of positive validation ensures a superb user experience for new users. You don't have to ask them to validate information they've validated 100 times before. It enables fraud teams to use much fresher, much more up-to-date, and much more complete data sets. It brings in, as we mentioned, a whole new standard of privacy for your users and your business data. And there's a natural economic advantage because instead of working with these third-party data aggregators, who you need to pay to essentially buy their data, and then you need to give them your data when you make the request, with absolute privacy, if you're working with other members of the network, then we've built an economic model that means companies work together and are encouraged to participate in a way that makes much more sense economically. So that's us, that's Identic. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Shmuley, very much. Let's see if we have any questions for Shmuley. Okay, guys. So thank you, Shmuley, for being with us. If you would like an introduction to Shmuley after the meeting, please feel free to reach out to us.
And now, let's move on. I'm happy to invite our last company to present with us, Max Fuchs, Business Development Principal, Duality Technologies. Duality Technologies solution combines advanced homomorphic encryption and data science, enabling organizations to derive insights without exposing sensitive data. Max, over to you.
Hi, Emma. Thank you for the introduction. I hope I still have everybody's attention. I didn't know I was presenting last. So please let me know when you can see presentation in full screen. And I'll kick it off. Okay, looks good. My name is Max. I lead business development for Duality Technologies. And as Emma said, Duality utilizes homomorphic encryption, an advanced encryption method for data collaboration in a secure manner. And I'll walk you through how this is relevant for financial service industry, and basically how this helps financial services institutions to build an industry-wide view of risk. We understand that financial institutions must build this industry-wide view of risk as opposed to an enterprise view, which exists today. Due to the following reasons. So also when we're looking at an enterprise, or even if that doesn't exist, but organizations don't have the full view of their customer activity. They can see only up to 25% of the activity. They spend a very high portion of their revenue on risk and compliance technologies. And also we've seen that during COVID, fraudulent activity increased, doubled down practically. So building this industry-wide view is important really to taking care of all of these. This is backed by leading regulators, many of whom we've briefed and gotten their both support in words, as you can see here, and also support in action. As an example, I'll mention the CDA in the UK, really building a consortium around information sharing to fight financial crime, who we've also worked with, and I'll briefly jump into a case study if we have the time. Once the organizations have this better view of risk, they can improve their operational efficiency. So also they can onboard more customers. Up to 12% of customers don't onboard only because of KYC errors somewhere along the process. 75% of false positives are because of missing information, which could be solved with this industry-wide view. And also, the information can be a generator for new value for organizations, which McKinsey summarized in up to $30 billion. And this shift to the industry-wide view is possible due to data collaboration and analytics, but these must meet the privacy burdens and the regulations on the other side, and of course also business secrets which are of interest to the organizations. Some more considerations to take into account when building this view is breaking down current internal barriers in the organizations. As I mentioned, complying with regulation, and of course, sharing data does not mean that we're not competing against the organizations we're sharing the data with. So we still want to maintain our competitive advantage. And we should do this by leveraging cutting-edge technology, and this is precisely what Duality proposes. And this is what you can see here. So Duality Secure Plus Query is basically an SQL querying tool, which enables you to build privacy-protected queries. You're able to protect the query parameters. So the inquirer builds the query and is able to send that to a data owner without exposing the content of the query and either the content of the results, which are then sent back to the inquirer to be decrypted. This utilizes homomorphic encryption. It's basically under the hood, so the end user experiences this as a simple collaboration tool. It was originally built for the US Department of Defense. Duality is leading industry standards to also have this standardized and really be able to leverage this and not have for the underlying technology to be standardized, the encryption method, and that's and as I mentioned, of course, regulators both supporting this and this and enabling the organizations to be compliant. We have two additional applications, both allowing a more data science view, so allowing to run regression models and XGBoost models on encrypted data, which we called Secure Plus Insights, and Secure Plus Statistics, allowing you to run descriptive statistics on encrypted data sets from multiple data sources. So basically, these are our solutions, and they fit into different stages of the financial crime investigation life cycle, from onboarding to risk rating, risk modeling, and to financial crime investigations. So at any of these stages can either any of the mentioned applications be of relevance and help the organization build that industry-wide view. So briefly, two case studies. So both a deployment which we've done at a leading Canadian bank at Scotiabank, and was also supported by FinTech, and they are looking to also proceed and further support additional banks who will join this collaboration. And also, as I mentioned before, with CDA in the UK, the Cyber Defense Alliance, where just to give you an understanding of the queries which can be asked with the Secure Plus query, and what was also piloted as part of this engagement, basically financial crime investigation questions, which can be seen here, the bottom left, allowing to build the fuller picture and collecting this information, and based on that, identifying financial crime activity. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Max. If anyone has a question for Max, please raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can write it directly in the chat. Okay, I see that no question for the moment. Thank you again, Max. Thank you for sharing this interesting use case. We'll be happy to connect you also with our guest afterwards.
So this concludes our first Pitch Hour session. Thank you to our clients for being with us, and we hope you discovered new solutions today. We will share the recording, and please feel free to reach out to us for the introductions.
If you have any specific topics of interest for future Pitch Hour events, please share them with us. We hope to see you next time, and have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.